Welcome to the 30-day metabolic reset. I am Martha Carlin, founder of BiotiQuest Probiotics, and I'm joined here by Jen St. Clair, who is a health coach and expert in all things metabolic health, microbiome, many different areas, and we're glad to have her here with us today. So by now, you will have received a few emails from us with some basic information. The Metabolic Reset is based on Benazati's book, Metabolic Freedom. And you will have received some guidelines for cleaning out the pantry, for a shopping list of foods that sort of fit the profile for what we're going to be trying to do here, which is fat adapt you so that you can burn fat for fuel as opposed to carbohydrates for fuel. And then if you are somebody who has already done low carb dieting or low carb eating lifestyle and you're already fat adapted, there is a section in the book called Advanced Fasting Reset. And so I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, because that's actually what I'm going to do during this period, because I am fat adapted. I started doing Ben's program back in early 2022 and have been following the guidelines of this work kind of intermittently as it has changed over the last 3 years. And because I'm going to be traveling, it's very hard to kind of fit the meal plans if you're trying to eat 3 meals a day inside of this window if you're traveling. So for me, I'll be doing the Advanced Fasting Reset, which on many of the days is just 1 meal a day. So in your 30-day metabolic reset, there's a couple of key points that what you're trying to do initially, if you have never done low carb eating, is you're starting to gradually move down the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating. So what you're going to be avoiding is white bread, pastries, any kind of sugary breakfast cereals, cookies, biscuits, candy, sweets, any of your sweetened beverages or energy drinks, sweet tea, anything with sugars in it, your pastas, pizzas, packaged snack food, so, crackers, chips, anything like that, and ice cream and frozen desserts. So any of those are going to have a high carbohydrate sugar load that is going to be a problem. And what we're starting to do is move the body away from sugar as a fuel source. So day one, you're going to limit your carbohydrate intake to 20 grams of carbohydrates. Day two, you'll limit that to 150 grams of carbohydrates. Day three, you will drop that down to 100 grams of carbohydrates. Day four, you'll go down to 75 grams of carbohydrates. And day five, you'll go down to 50 grams of carbohydrates. And it doesn't talk in here about whether that is total carbohydrate load or net carbohydrate load. Jen, can you talk a little bit about the difference between those two and kind of what your experience when somebody's trying to drop down this carb level, if that's net carbs or?
Yeah. And I think what Benazati means is net carbohydrates, I would assume, because if we're just sticking with whole foods, there will be a portion of that food that's fiber. So let's take an apple, for example. I think your average apple has about 19 or 20 grams of carbohydrates, but about 9 of them will be from the fibers. And we want those fibers. So you subtract the total carbs and the net carbs, and you get kind of a better number.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Because I think sometimes people look at numbers like this and then they go, okay, well, what am I going to eat? Or they get afraid of eating any carbohydrates. And, one of the things in this process also is you start to move into what they call flex days, because you're adapting your body to be able to burn fat, but you don't want to lose your ability to burn carbohydrates. And so you're moving back and forth between protein and fat-based, heavily weighted day of eating and into a carbohydrate day of eating. But when you are eating those higher carbohydrates days, which they call flex days, you're not eating a lot of fat, because fat and carbohydrates together are not a great mix, which is kind of a bummer because I like a lot of butter on my baked potato. But some other kind of recommendations in here, generally, of things to avoid are the inflammatory oils. So that's a lot of these highly processed canola oil and corn oil. Those are also going to have likely have herbicide residues in them. So you want to use for your oils, you want to use ghee or butter or tallow, some type of fat like that, and MCT oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride oil. You won't use that for cooking, but you could use that for, oil on a salad dressing, or some people actually put it in their coffee. Other things to avoid: artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, which, I beat that drum all the time because it's also very heavy in the herbicide glyphosate, which is very damaging to your microbiome and your overall health. You want to just learn to read your labels and try to avoid any kind of processed food that when you read the label, you don't recognize whatever you're looking at, the ingredient. Then in this fat adaptation process, Ben has something called the 2-2-2 rule. And so that is this step where you are having 2 tablespoons of grass-fed butter or ghee or beef tallow or duck fat, 2 tablespoons of the coconut oil or MCT, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil or avocado oil. I would say my preference would be olive oil. And you don't consume them all at once, but you're having that each day. So those 6 tablespoons of that fat with your meals throughout the course of the day. And that is part of what is fueling your body with these good fats, to be able to do that fat adaptation. So, and then there's a list in the book, if you want to continue consuming vegetables on your diet, of the vegetables that are the most friendly for ketosis. And maybe just for a moment, the term keto is short for ketosis, but ketosis is essentially when you're in the state of burning fat for fuel, which can actually be converted into glucose for your brain. And that's through a process called gluconeogenesis, where it converts the fat in your body through your liver into fuel that can be used. And when you're either in a fasted state or in a low carbohydrate eating state, your body will start to burn fat for fuel. So you start out in this process with this 2-2-2 rule to give your body some fat to be able to convert. And then over time, you'll start to convert your own fat. So if you're already fat adapted, you probably don't need to add 6 tablespoons of fat into your diet, because you can also get to a point. Sometimes when people start out in these processes, they think, oh, I can eat all the fat I want. And if you eat too much fat, you're probably not going to lose any weight in the process. You may still get keto adapted, but you may not lose any, real weight. So the meats that are recommended are grass-fed beef, pork, lamb, eggs, bison, turkey, chicken, charcuterie meats like salami and prosciutto, but you want to make sure that they're nitrate free. venison or deer meat, wild caught sardines, and wild caught salmon. Jen, maybe you want to talk for a second about, we've had some conversations about what are the higher protein meats, because also during this process, as you're kind of shifting your diet, you're trying to get a certain amount of protein. And that seems to be one of the trickier things in the process is, getting sufficient protein when you're narrowing these eating windows.
Yeah. Yeah. And I loved having ways to measure this. So I liked having the Keto Mojo. That was very helpful for me. So you can track not just your blood sugar, but your ketones, and you'll get to see like your morning fasted ketone levels rise throughout the month. So that's very encouraging. You can also watch your blood glucose in the morning drop. And so these are nice tools to have on hand to help you get through these 30 days if you encounter, low motivation days. And then having a food app, and there are a bunch of them out there, a good food app to use as a tool. You don't have to track every single food, but again, it's nice to know how many carbs you're eating or how much protein is in, say, and having a food scale. So you can measure out like how much chicken you would typically eat, get that in grams, and then just plug it into your food app and just see, okay, I'm getting, X amount of protein here. And so as far as assigning a number, like I would start with the carbohydrates because we are trying to get into a fat adaptation mode first. So start off with, reducing those carbs and really limit it down to that 50 as best you can. Lower if you are already, as Martha says, you're already fat adapted. How can I, amplify the effects? And then, so a good food app, a good ketone and blood glucose device. As far as protein recommendations, that's a matter of philosophy. I think the going philosophy right now is 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So if you weigh 120 pounds, you want to get in 120 grams of protein per day. Now, that might be fine for a normal day where you're eating 3 meals or 2 meals and a couple snacks. That's going to be harder to do in these shrinking eating windows. So I wouldn't hold too tightly onto that idea, but just prioritize protein and eat to, we want you to eat until you're, mostly full, not eat until you're overstuffed with protein. That would
Right.
kind of.
So on the protein front, I think maybe I'll mention something here. There's a interesting article in the Weston Price Quarterly Journal about proteins in particular, because often you'll see in whether it's a biohacker community or people promoting low carb or people promoting high protein, that they will often promote these powdered protein drinks, whether it's plant protein, or now there are a lot of animal protein based collagen, or just, pure animal protein, or whey. You'll see whey protein, and those proteins, in the processing of them, it denatures the structure of the protein. And so I'm not particularly a big fan of trying to get your protein through a protein shake. I know there are a lot of people who do that, but I will also say on my personal journey, in investigating what may have been factors in John getting Parkinson's, he was drinking a soy protein shake every day, sometimes twice a day, for 2 years prior to his Parkinson's diagnosis. Was that the cause? Probably not the cause, but it certainly, I think, could have been a contributor to that. So, use with caution, I would say, any particular protein supplements. The other thing I'll say is, like, people will often look for either keto bars or protein snack bars as something to hold them over. And those are really just candy bars. So Even though they say they're keto, whatever, that whole section in the grocery store of health food bars is not particularly healthy. It's a processed food. So let's be mindful of that. So, we're going to be moving away from fruits, but, you're looking at those fruits that have fiber. So your net fiber is going to be better, in that category. Vegetables that you can kind of look at. And we also do have in the resources, and actually I can probably maybe pull those up and share them if I can figure out what I did with that. Let's see. Okay. Now I have to go back over here and like I'm always toggling back and forth between places and I have too many windows open. Let me share my screen because we gave you access to these great resources that Jen helped put together for us. So you have nuts and seeds. That's a visual facts here. So this will tell you your protein, fats, and no, it's the other way.
Net carbs first.
Net carbs, protein, and fat. So peely nuts, they're kind of interesting. There's a yogurt company that makes yogurt from peely nuts, but I haven't seen it in a long time. So I'm wondering if they're having a hard time finding it. So these are from Keto Mojo that Jen helped put together for us, but this will tell you the net carbs of the different fruits. You're going to get a lot of polyphenols from the color in your colorful fruits, but you have to see here a banana is pretty high. One banana has 21 grams. Now, I don't know if that would be different, Jen, for a green banana.
Yeah, if it's truly a green banana, meaning you have to peel it with a knife, and that peel is deep green, not mottled, no yellow whatsoever. That should be all fiber and no carbs, no net carbs. So all fiber.
Not too many people are lining up for that, though.
No, you have to dip them in dark chocolate to make it kind of worth it. But Martha, maybe you want to talk about the fibers, higher fiber contents, and the gut.
Oh, yeah. So so different fibers actually feed different bacteria in the gut, and so it is important to continue feeding fiber to your gut even as you're going through, this process of fat adaptation. One of the things I wrote a blog about recently was what happened to the gut microbiome in a 90-day carnivore diet. And that's where you're really not getting much fiber at all, except for the hyaluronic acid that is in a carnivore diet. And so, that can be quite problematic. You want to be able to feed your microbiome. So I can go back to the fruits. I'll go back there in a second. So here's your cheeses. I love cheese, but dairy can often be an issue for people. And so I think actually in Ben's program, he recommends that you don't have dairy during this 30-day reset. But if you decided you were going to have some dairy, these would be your net carb, protein, and fat. I think there are a few recipes and things that Ben has where you can have goat cheese, but generally speaking, you're pretty much avoiding dairy during this 30-day period. So, what you have here, and often like people will do a juicing diet or things like that. If you've heard people do that, when they do that, they're taking out all the fiber that feeds the microbiome, and they're just putting in the sugars that actually spike your insulin. And one of the whole benefits of this 30-day metabolic reset is you are resetting your insulin sensitivity. So these numbers would be for the whole fruit. But for example, an apple has apple pectin. And apple pectin is a really good fiber also for binding up toxins in the gut. And so it can be beneficial from, if you have bad bacteria or something, in that die-off process, an apple can actually, the pectin in the apple can actually help pull that out. And it's interesting because there is some research ongoing for both apple and citrus pectin in Alzheimer's. But and then this is your animal protein. So you're basically fat and protein. So the different birds and the different proteins. And I think this is where we came back and said that the chicken, I thought at one place we had said that chicken was higher protein, but it looks like
28 in chicken breast. Is that, I can't quite see if that, what
chicken
that number
breast
says.
is 20 is, yeah, 28 grams. Yeah. Brisket is 29. Turkey breast, 28. So they're all pretty similar, I would say. They're, it's not really far off the mark. I think one of the there are some people I have done, I'm going to come off of, well, this is your reset pantry guide. So, some of what we were just talking about, the proteins, these are your non-starchy vegetables that you can focus on. And these are the low glycemic fruits. So they're going to, be the lowest in sugars that can kind of push up your insulin. So, and with berries, you do always want to choose organic if possible, because there's a lot of pesticide use in fruit growing. And then you've got your nuts and seeds, the starchy carbs that are allowable, fruits on your flex days, what you can have, and then what to avoid entirely during the reset, and your just basic shopping tips and where you can find these things. So I'm going to come back over here.
And I'd like to just point out the importance of using that list and really making an effort to eliminate those problem foods from your pantry and from your fridge. It matters, I would say, around week 2, when you're starting to flex those fasting muscles. Things might be getting a little more difficult, and the minute you see something, a grab and go food of your old, from your previous way of eating, you're going to be so tempted, and it's going to just take this massive amount of willpower to not eat it. And we don't want you to have to work that hard. If it's not there, you won't worry about it. And then you've got some beautiful fruits to choose from. You have an array of nuts that you can mix together. You can saute them lightly in a little butter and salt, or however you want to season them. And you've got a nice nut mix now if you need to just grab something because you're hungry. But really spend time on your prep for this, because that's one of the big setups for success.
That's great advice, Jen. Yes. And yeah, ridding the pantry of all temptation is, it can be extremely difficult too if you are living in a household with multiple people and not everyone is doing this with you. So, I encourage you to maybe see if other people, even if they don't want to go through the full reset, if, you might just enlist their support as you're going through and say, okay, on our evening meals while I'm doing this reset, we're going to be done eating by, 5:30 at the latest, or like set whatever your time frame so that you're in those fasting windows, and just ask your family to support you in that, or if they're not able to because of working schedule or that sort of thing, just be clear that, you're going to be eating in this window, and, you're happy to help them get what they need in their time frame, but you need to stick to these eating windows. And I think one of the really important things about this program is this rest and digest. We kind of live in this crazy fast-paced world, and convenience food all over, and we're always in a rush, but the body needs time to digest the food, and then after the food is digested, to rest for a period of time. And during that resting period is when, you're most likely for your body to access fat for energy. But if you're constantly feeding yourself, the body never gets that rest period. And in the rest period is actually when the body cleans up the trash. So we have a lot of cellular trash, and that trash is cleaned up when we sleep at night, and it's cleaned up when we're not eating. So those periods of rest are very important. So, and I think that really can't be underestimated. There's also one other kind of tip in here, which Ben calls the keto cocktail, because often as you start to switch away from the carbohydrates in your diet, you may get a little bit of reduced potassium and salt. So, and also, as a part of this drink, it includes apple cider vinegar, and that can kind of kick up your metabolic rate. And so the Keto Camp cocktail is 16 ounces of spring water. So that's going to have minerals in it. 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. I actually only use 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar because you don't want to overdo potassium either. And a pinch of your high quality sea salt. I use Redmond's. A lot of people like Baja. There are a few good ones, but you don't want to use just plain old Morton's table salt because it has no minerals in it. And so what you do is you mix up that cocktail of 16 ounces, and then you're kind of sipping that throughout the day. And that apple cider vinegar is also going to help your gut in its process of digestion and digesting this higher protein load that you're having as well. And you're not going to have snacks between your meals. So that's kind of one of the tricks. You're narrowing your eating window. You are eating a solid meal, and you're stopping before you get over full. And then you're not snacking in between meals. So anything you think I've missed that, for the kickoff, I think, we're avoiding the bad oils. We talked about that, the toxic ingredients, refined flours and sugars, alcohol. That's a tough one for a lot of people, but I think you can do it. There's questions in here, and Ben answers some questions in the book about coffee. A lot of the people in the biohacker community and I don't know, influencers talk about coffee a lot and drinking coffee, and I love my coffee. But coffee kicks up your stress hormones, and your stress hormones will impact your ability to burn fat. So I think if you can do it, if you're going through this process of creating discipline, start to taper down the amount of coffee that you're drinking. And also, I think Ben mentions in the book, don't drink the cup of coffee first thing in the morning. So you want to wait an hour, which is really hard for coffee lovers to do because that's kind of that habit of the first thing in the morning. But to wait an hour to an hour and a half to let your metabolism kind of settle down before you put caffeine, which is going to kind of up your cortisol.
Yeah.
And I have actually been testing out a dandelion tea
Mm.
this week, and I've had a couple of days without coffee. And
Wow.
it's interesting to me because I used to, years ago, when I would try to get off of coffee, I would get a headache, but I don't do that anymore. And I don't know, so I can go several days without coffee and not have a headache. So I don't know what the difference is there, but anyway, I know you're a coffee lover. So
I'm a coffee lover, but I've been drinking yerba mate tea lately. And I think it actually has more caffeine, though I have to be careful. But what during the last round of the reset, Martha, how did you handle coffee? You were drinking coffee then. What did you do?
yeah, I continued to drink the coffee then, but I did try to push it out and not have it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So, and really what's made me shift away from the coffee, I just did a, a 4-week yoga kind of practice called sadhana, where we talked about the morning practice and what you do in yoga. And one of the first things you do, and I've done this with my panchakarma many times, but I hadn't really thought about it as my part of my daily practice, is the first thing you drink in the morning is a cup of warm water with a pinch of sea salt and a squeeze of lemon.
Nice.
And so that was part of this sadhana class that we learned, but it also came up in the research that I'm doing with Dr. Ninham on Parkinson's, and all the way back to 1912, research showing that the best thing for constipation was actually warm water with a pinch of sea salt, or, a teaspoon, even up to a teaspoon. It didn't have the lemon juice, but I started, so I guess a month ago, because I just finished my last, and doing the, warm salt water with lemon. And I mean, I thought Sugar Shift gave me like clockwork. That the warm salt water with lemon is like, I get up, I do my meditation and a couple of my breathing things and fix my warm water with lemon. And man, it's like 10 minutes later, walk to the bathroom, which maybe is TMI, but for a lot of people who are trying to do a reset, I think that's important. And also, as we're shifting during this process, constipation can become an issue when you're loading up on more protein, and also probably if you don't have a gallbladder and you're eating more fat. So maybe the next time we'll talk a little bit more about that and some of the things that you can do if you don't have a gallbladder. But I think for that, we'll cut it off for today, and hope you've gotten your book. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly at, let's see, can I put it in the chat? Well, they won't get the chat. So martha.carlin@BiotiQuest.com. And I'll be happy to answer your questions. I can get specific questions to Jen as well, or Jen, if you want to give them your email.
Yeah, because if anybody needs some coaching help through this, that's one of the things that I do. And so I can be reached at it. Are you going to post this
Yeah.
video editing, Jennifer? So it's Jennifer at f3healthcoaching.com.
And that's really, something important I should have said at the beginning. So Jen has been a health coach for quite some time. And, she's a really great resource if you are looking to kind of take things to the next level and really have an accountability partner and somebody who's going to work through what your specific goals are. Jen's a really great resource for that. And I,
Thank
encourage
you, Martha.
that. One of the kind of last things I'll mention is chapter 10 in this book, which talks about your mindset. And your mindset is such an important part of really everything. I mean, your mind is controlling a lot. And that was also part of this 4-week yoga practice that we did. You know, when you start your day the right way with, you know, with the breathing, you know, you're not jumping out of bed and kind of hitting the runway and taking off. You're setting this time to really set your intention for the day, to kind of revisit what your goals are, to do some breathing and relaxation to clear the mind. Like, you'll be amazed at what that does for you. And, you know, I don't know if Ben talks about it in here or not, but I was on a call with him over the weekend, and he was talking to people, asking him what their C-type goals. So you have like A, B, and C-type goals. So, like, you know, this might be an A or B type goal for you, but you might have a longer term C-type goal of what kind of changes you want to see in your life and your health. And then, you know, sometimes with a C-type goal, it really does help to have a you know, personal coaching to help you along the way, because, you know, we need somebody to hold us accountable. And so that's also why we do the group calls, because when people come in together and, you know, share their questions and comments, it really helps other people kind of understand what the experience is, and maybe what they're experiencing isn't that different from somebody else. And so, it's like we share this in common, and you know, it helps us all get there faster and better if we support each other. So thank you for listening to the video, and we hope that we get you on the next call, because we kind of messed up our reminder. I probably shouldn't put that in the video, but
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to turn off the recording.